guys, welcome back to Cult of Man. We are continuing on with our Halloween special episodes where I kind of curate for you guys what I think are the best examples of the various horror genres. And today we are delving into probably one of my favorite horror horror characters, and certainly genres of horror film. And what's interesting about them is there really aren't a lot of examples of great examples of great werewolf films. But the ones we do have, I think, are real gems. And the first one, I think, I feel strongly, The Wolfman from 1941, one of the original Universal monsters. I think out of all of them, it might be the most beautiful in terms of the, not just the makeup of the Wolfman himself, but even the villages and the miniature models and the set design that they did in the Wolfman in particular, I think really stands out amongst all of them. It feels a bit more original. Nothing against the others, but I do feel like some of the castles and some of the sets from the other films kind of feel interchangeable, whereas with the Wolfman, it does feel a bit more individual in terms of the design and the aesthetic of it. I also think that there's just a bit, maybe tied with Frankenstein, for having a bit more of heart to it. You know, you have the character of the Wolfman dealing with this predicament that he's in, that he's become a wolf, and how he deals with that and how he deals with the world around him. I think it's a little deeper than some of the other horror fare of the age. And again, it's beautiful black and white. It is a legend for a reason, and I think that that alone really makes it worth watching. I know modern horror fans can sometimes have a difficult time with the black and white, the universal horror, because it doesn't have obviously the graphic nature of some of the things we like in modern horror. I don't particularly like torture porn or the splatter gore stuff. Really, I don't mind a bit of that in a movie for effect, but the Terrifiers and the those types of films don't really, I'm not into that necessarily. I like suspense, I like a mystery, I like a well-crafted cinematographic, beautifully composed film, with a spooky sense to it. And that's really what The Wolfman from 1941 delivers. You have Bela Lugosi in this. You have just major legends of the age doing these films in the early 40s, and that alone, it's fun to examine the history and see where these things come from. And I, like films like Night of the Living Dead, The Wolfman it's one of those movies that we think we know because it's just there, and we take for granted black and white film and older films. Oh, it can't be that good. And then we go back and we actually watch them and we see, oh, this is really solid, despite the fact that this movie is so old. It's a legend for a reason. So definitely check out The Wolfman, 1941. I think it's, and it has to be because it's kind of the first werewolf movie, first of its genre, and I think it knocks it out of the park. And what's interesting is I think the next best example of a werewolf film comes exactly 40 years later, 1981's An American Werewolf in London, directed by a very young John Landis, who 2 years later would end up directing Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is also just an incredible visual sort of feast for the eyes, a fun, spooky, aesthetic masterpiece. American Werewolf in London, I think, can throw people a bit because it does have aspects of comedy in it. I've seen people try to frame it as a comedy, and it isn't. What's so masterful about An American Werewolf in London is, while it does have genuine lighthearted moments, it does have its comedic moments, it absolutely has very scary moments. It also has real heart, real tragic elements to it, in that you have the main character dealing with the fact that he has been attacked by a wolf and is dealing with the repercussions of it. And it's not treated like, okay, he's been bit by a wolf or he's been scratched by a wolf, so now he becomes a wolf and kills everybody. He Landis firmly keeps the story, the characters, the narrative in the realm of, if this really happened to you, how might you deal with it? And you're dealing with a character who is a young man who just wanted to go backpacking through the UK and then ends up in this predicament. Landis uses bits and pieces of the werewolf myth that were established in films like The Wolfman from '41 in this film, which is kind of cool. There's this sort of tie back to that original Universal monster movie. Again, that's pretty legendary and just par for the course, foundational type of horror. There is the dialogue in this movie, the shots of London, the shots of I think it's the north of England that they're trekking through in the beginning. It just really beautiful. Like, you can press pause on so many moments of this movie and you just have a great composition. You can just frame it and make it a wallpaper on your laptop or whatnot. One of the things too that as a young director Landis does that I've only really ever seen a couple other directors do, namely Steven Spielberg in Jaws. You know, in Jaws, we don't really see the entire shark until the end. And that part of that was due with the fact that the shark kept breaking down. So they really had to work around, showing you the fins and showing you what you don't see with the attacks. And that ended up being a far more effective technique for Jaws overall. And so we get this sort of explosive ending where you see the full shark and, everything is going crazy. It just is a way more effective film and a better ending. Landis does the exact same thing. There are so many point of view shots from the point of view of the wolf in this film, and just little bits, very fast clips of like the hind leg of the wolf or the tail of the wolf or maybe an eye. And it builds such a great sense of dread, a great sense of interest. It's such a compelling watch because you're wondering, well, when am I going to see this wild beast that I can hear and I can see moving around? I can see it stalking people. I can see it terrifying the people of London and, frankly, me as the viewer. And he's so restrained. William Friedkin does this pretty much for 45 straight minutes in the original Exorcist, and that's part of the reason why that movie is. There's many reasons why that's a masterpiece, even beyond it being a great horror film. This level of restraint that people like Landis execute in An American Werewolf in London overall just makes for a far more effective film. It also gives us the opportunity to see the very human characters deal with the situation, which grounds it in a sense of reality, so that when things do go crazy or we do get these spookier, scarier, more horrific scenes, they just punch so much harder as a result. I'm a student of this film. There's so much in my own writing that I have things that I could show, and I feel like sort of not showing so much is it's so much more effective, so that when you do make the conscious decision to, let it rip within your script, within your film, the viewers appreciate it more. You can really coil up the tension, and then when you decide to just let that baby fly, again, it's just that much more effective. But An American Werewolf in London, 1981, it's in my top 10 of all time. Quite frankly, it's up there with Blade Runner. It's up there with 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's up there with everything Andrei Tarkovsky ever did, and it's so fun. It has a comfort horror type of feel where you can kind of just leave it on in the background. But I find myself, when I have it on, it's like I just end up, okay, I got to put down what I'm doing and just watch. So check that one out, guys. I can't say enough nice things about that film and what Landis did. And then the last one, again, this is a really short list. And I'm sure some of you are going to be screaming, you forgot about blankety blank. Please comment below if there's anything I'm missing. But these are just, in terms of overall practical effects, overall tension, suspense, thrills, drama, that's kind of what I'm using on all of these. But Silver Bullet, 1986, based on the Stephen King short story starring Corey Haim. It really, and Gary Busey, it technically, I guess, is supposed to be set in the 70s, but everything looks pretty 80s, including some of the cars, but it doesn't really matter. Silver Bullet is about a young man who he's confined to a wheelchair, but what's so cool about this is it's a mid-80s film, and you have a character with a disability, but in no way does the character allow his disability to stop him from having a childhood and getting out and having a life. And I think that's really cool. It could have been so lazily written if it had been anyone else other than Stephen King. And, this young man he's got youthful vigor and optimism. He's just, just sort of a, exploratory, fun kid. And he has souped up his wheelchair. Like he's got like an engine on this thing, and he gets around town and, he does his thing, and it's really cool to see that. We're in a time in Hollywood where we're trying to correct an historical injustice where characters that are from marginalized communities or from minority groups or people who are differently abled were just kind of never seen. And Silver Bullet is a beautiful example of a character who's just a character. After a while, it's like, okay, yeah, he uses a chair. You don't care about it. You love this kid. He's just kind of a fun character. The plot is interesting because I saw this movie when I was a kid. And there are moments in your childhood where if you've ever been bullied or you've ever sort of noticed things in your neighborhood that just kind of seem odd or weird, and nobody believes you. Nobody believes that, this neighbor's kind of weird. Nobody believes you that the boys down the street are bullying you, and that's why you have to go, 3 blocks around to get to a corner store. The character that Corey Haim plays, he's the only one who's kind of seeing or is aware of this werewolf, and he's trying to deal with it on his own, trying to get maybe adults to listen to him, and they're not, save for his younger sister. And eventually, I can't remember if Gary Busey is his dad or a stepdad character. I feel like it's a stepdad character. So you have this movie that builds a great sense of paranoia as this kid is dealing with, obviously, a very strange phenomenon, a super scary phenomenon. And it does add to it, the fact that he uses a chair. There are very scary moments where is that wolf there? Is it coming after him? Is his chair charged up? Does he have enough fuel? Just great, thrilling, tense moments. But again, coming back to the character that Corey Haim is playing, this kid is just really resourceful and really interesting and really clever. And so while he is sort of dealing with it alone, he's kind of this little badass who it's like, yeah, I'm going to charge up. I'm going to soup up my chair. I'm going to, make makeshift weapons, all of these things. Just, again, one of the great things about movies about kids in the 80s is they're just all little badasses, whether it's Silver Bullet, The Monster Squad, Goonies, Gremlins. These kids were not disempowered at all. And that adds a layer to Silver Bullet that I think, again, in lesser hands, just would not have worked. You just end up with little kids or teenagers running around trying to get away from the werewolf, when in fact you're dealing with a kid who is using his mind and using his wits and his creativity to deal with this threat that the larger adult world just either isn't seeing, isn't believing, or wouldn't believe. And it's a lot of fun. The use of restraint per John Landis's An American Werewolf in London is also something that is well done in this movie. You get bits and pieces of the wolf. You get point of view shots that build great suspense and terror and thrills. I don't want to give too much away, but the characters and the suspicion of who is it, what's going on, is also really interesting. There's a couple scenes in a church that I think are some of the coolest I've ever seen in a horror movie, let alone a werewolf movie. And again, what makes these films in this list stand out, and especially Silver Bullet, is just the level of creativity. Not everything that has been adapted from the works of Stephen King has always been a success, but this is an absolute home run, and I feel like it tends to be overlooked, by it and Christine and other just beautifully executed adaptions of his work. Silver Bullet deserves to be, at the top with those other films and other miniseries. So do check it out. It's 80s fun. It's a badass kid. It's excellent directing. It's a cool creature. And it's Gary Busey at just doing Gary Busey, what he does, what we enjoy him doing. So yeah, those are my three top picks for werewolf movies. If there's one that I've missed, let me know in the comments below. I'm always down to check stuff out. Stuff like An American Werewolf in Paris. It's early CGI. It really takes away from what I think that could have been. I think practical effects always win, certainly throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. We're in an era now where we can really mix practical effects and CGI, AI effects to, I think, a better degree. But, again, I'm old school. I'm always going to love those practical effects more. And each of these three, The Wolfman, An American Werewolf in London, and Silver Bullet, are just beautiful executions of practical effects, expert storytelling, incredible directing, acting. So check them out. And again, please like, subscribe, share, and enjoy your Halloween. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.